Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Detective.
Good morning.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Patricia Ramirez, and for the past 10 years, I've been employed by the City of Tempe as a police officer. The first 5 years was in the patrol division as a uniformed police officer. Then, during the year of 2007, I transferred over to the Criminal Investigations Bureau when I became a detective. My first assignment was in the Property Crimes Unit, and then the following year I transferred to my current position, which is in the Sex Crimes Unit. This also includes crimes against children and elder abuse.
And so in the Sex Crimes Unit that you work in, it involves crimes that don't involve sex crimes if they involve children or elders?
Yes.
And you indicated that you've been working in that bureau since when?
Since 2007.
Now, on December 27, 2009, did you become involved in the investigation regarding a missing child by the name of Gabriel Johnson?
Yes.
And at that time, Gabriel was 7 months old?
Yes.
And in fact, today is his 3rd birthday, correct?
Yes, he was.
At some point in time during the investigation, were you assigned to be the case agent in the case involving the missing child?
Yes.
What exactly does it mean to be the case agent?
The case agent is a person who manages the case, who is a point of contact. For example, if someone from another department needs info and so forth, is the point of contact. Also, the case case agent will see the case through its closure, through its disposition.
And what do you mean by a case through its closure or disposition?
Well, a case can end in terms of an arrest, or if a case is prepared in what we call long form, where it's sent over to the county attorney's office for review. Also, at times, a case is closed because we don't have anything further to work off of that. A case could be closed if a victim wishes to not aid in prosecution. So depending on the closure, that case agent is assigned to it to see it through.
Is a case closed if there's not any evidence to support the crime alleged?
Yes.
Now, as a case agent, are you in charge of making assignments for other detectives or police officers?
Yes, I work along with my supervisor or command staff, but I do play a part in that.
In this particular case, you indicated you were the case agent, and we heard from Detective Thompson yesterday that he was also the co-case agent as well. In this particular case, was there command staff involved?
Yes.
And was there, we've heard about Sergeant King, and we've heard from Sergeant Lenzen. Who was your sergeant at the time?
Sergeant Brudnock.
And was there a lieutenant involved in this case?
Yes.
Was there a commander involved in this case?
Yes.
At times, was the chief of police advised at least of this case?
Yes.
Did you have anybody else involved in the case, such as a public information officer?
Yes.
A legal advisor?
Yes.
And now we've heard from several different police officers and detectives today. Have we heard from all of the Tempe police officers and detectives who worked on this case?
No.
Were there several other police officers and detectives who did things that we haven't heard from?
Yes.
Now, this case is a fairly extensive case as far as written material, is it not?
Yes.
In fact, the police report itself is about over 5,000 or so pages.
That's correct.
And you heard Detective Thompson testify that the attachments that he obtained from MySpace alone were over 1,000 pages.
Yes.
And we saw a number of attachments from Detective Harris, correct?
Yes.
And that didn't even include all the attachments he had obtained.
That's correct.
And there are other attachments from other police officers that were done as well that we haven't discussed or counted.
That's correct.
I'm going to object to leading a series of leading questions.
Sustained.
Thank you.
Detective, as the case agent, are you required to know what's in every page of the police report?
No.
Is it even possible for you to know what every detective and police officer did on this particular case?
No.
If you are asked any questions by either counsel in this case about something a particular detective or officer did, will you necessarily be able to answer it?
No.
Do you have materials available for you to refresh your recollection or to look for that information if need be?
Yes.
And is that this binder?
Yes, this is an example because that is a binder that contains other officers' reports, although that's not every report.
Now, during this case, we've heard before that there were some briefings. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those briefings involved?
Sure. We pretty much had daily briefings. Those at times would be in a conference room where a lieutenant was present, a sergeant was present, a commander was present, other detectives, and then at times we would have a smaller briefing, which would be in Sergeant Brudnock's office, and he is currently my current sergeant, and so then we would get an update where we didn't have the opportunity to have everybody present, so we would have like a daily update, and I would say that that's through a smaller briefing.
And when you had the daily update with people through smaller briefings, did you sometimes hear from detectives like Detective Harris?
Yes.
Did you sometimes hear from Detective Thompson?
Yes.
Did you hear from Detective Larson?
Yes.
Detective Welling?
Objection, no more.
Yes.
We are technically leading, so that's sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I don't think those are leading questions. A leading question is one that suggests the answer, and I don't know.
You are, a non-leading question is who did you hear from? And I will give you leeway on some background, and that's close, but I do note that there has been leading questions, and we need to ask non-leading questions. As to that background, I'm not as concerned about it, so try not to lead going forward.
Well, let me ask you this. The detectives and the officers we heard from already in this trial, were they often present at these briefings?
Yes.
And did you hear information about the text messages at these briefings?
Yes.
Did you hear any information regarding the other material that was presented at these briefings?
Yes.
And so as this information is being provided to you, what are you doing with this information?
Well, I'm working along with my sergeant and command staff in terms of what our next step needs to be and in terms of delegating tasks to other detectives.
Now, in this particular case, we've heard some information about tips. Can you tell us a little bit more about, was there a tip line set up in this case, or how were tips handled?
We had a high volume of tips that came in, and so early on we did work with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that they assist us with tips, and then there was also certain detectives that were assigned to work tips, and we had our public information officer in terms of providing the phone number to the public for tips, but that was also worked with 2 other sergeants, and I didn't actually have the role of handling all those tips.
So was it your job to follow up on those tips?
Yes, other detectives would, they would come to me and tell me if there was something that was valid to work off of those tips, but pretty much my sergeant would assign tips, another sergeant assigned tips, and allowed them to work that while I was working a different angle.
Would you be providing information on tips that the other detectives or officers didn't feel were valid as far as the case?
No. If something came in that wasn't valid, then that was for their job, for their role to see that through, document that. But really in terms of just for what we handled in this investigation, then there was really no need to come to me and explain those types of tips.
Now, we've heard from previous testimony a little bit about the FBI being involved in this case. How was the FBI involved?
The FBI mainly assisted us in this investigation by, as it progressed, by doing interviews out of state, by assisting us in, let's say, in Tennessee, whereas we couldn't fly out there and interview people, so then the FBI assisted with that.
Now, Detective, I've seen many a TV show where the FBI walks in and takes over an investigation. Did that happen in this case?
No.
And even though this involved offenses that happened here and in another state?
True.
Who's Mike Conrad?
Mike Conrad is from the FBI, and he assisted us because his whole background is with missing and abducted children. So he did come to our department, and he was there on several occasions to assist us, give us. He pretty much represented the FBI. So, for example, if agents in another state were interviewing and so forth, then he was a part of the briefing, and he would update us on what was found out through those interviews.
So other than the FBI agents who are working in other states, were there other police departments involved in assisting you with the investigation?
Yes, we had assistance from, for example, San Antonio Police Department. We had Boston Police assisting us. We had Miami Beach Police assisting us. We had Louisiana. So it definitely was complex in terms of many different law enforcement agencies assisting.
And we've heard some information about Elizabeth being in Miami Beach and in Miami and in San Antonio. Were there investigators looking in those areas?
Yes.
And were there investigators interviewing witnesses in those areas?
Yes.
And how about, well, let me ask you this. We've talked a little bit, or we've heard a little bit about Elizabeth Johnson's family members. For instance, we've heard testimony about a grandfather and a grandmother and a twin brother. Who's her grandfather?
Her grandfather is Robert Johnson Sr. He also goes by the name of Bob Johnson, so throughout my contact with him, I refer to him as Bob Johnson.
And at the time, in December of 2009, where did Bob Johnson reside?
He lived in Scottsdale, Arizona.
And we've heard about Elizabeth Johnson's twin brother. What was his name?
Yes, his name is Robert Johnson Jr.
And at the time, in December 2009, where did he reside?
He lived in Phoenix, Arizona.
And we've heard about Elizabeth Johnson's grandmother. Who's that?
She goes by two different names, Sylvette, and she lives in Boston.
And Elizabeth's grandmother, is she paternal or maternal?
Maternal.
And her grandfather?
Is paternal.
So they're not related to each other?
No.
The grandparents. You indicated that Elizabeth's grandmother lived in Boston. Was part of the investigation to talk to her?
Yes.
And what happened there? Who was it who was assigned to go and talk to her?
Detective Ryberg had made contact with her, but Boston Police made contact with her to see if there were any investigative findings that would assist us.
For instance, if she had baby Gabriel with her?
Yes.
And were Bob Johnson and Robert Johnson interviewed?
Yes.
And did people look to see if baby Gabriel was with either of them?
Yes. And I had quite a bit of contact with Bob Johnson.
Now, we've heard information about Tennessee and the Smiths' background in Tennessee. Did people go out to look in Tennessee to see if baby Gabriel was anywhere connected to the Smiths?
Yes.
And did they find anything indicating that baby Gabriel was anywhere in Tennessee with anyone connected to the Smiths?
No.
And in fact, let me ask you this, did police also look in San Antonio and Louisiana for anybody who might be connected to the Smiths to see if baby Gabriel was with any of those people?
That is correct.
And they didn't find baby Gabriel with any of those people?
No.
Now, I mean, we've talked about a lot of different detectives and police officers being involved in this case. Was this, in your realm of cases, the type of cases you handled, was this a big case, a normal case?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
It was a very unique case. We don't have many, and thankfully many, missing, abducted children investigations. And so being that we had, as time went by, that we learned that the mother was out of state and we had to work with all these different law enforcement agencies. I mean, it was pretty complex and unique.
And Tempe, about what size a police agency is that?
We have approximately under 500 officers.
And do you have any idea about how many detectives?
Detectives, I would say we have approximately 30 detectives.
And what kind of hours were you and the other detectives and officers working on this case?
Well, our hours were extremely long. Starting from the first day I was up on that first day probably about 22 hours. One day I was at work for easily over 24 hours. And normally I work a 10-hour work shift, but I would easily say that it ranged from 15 plus hours for a lot of us.
Now, we've heard about it being your responsibility for the final disposition in cases in which you're a case agent. Was it your responsibility for the final disposition in this particular case,
Yes.
as well as Elizabeth Johnson's case?
Yes.
Now, the defendant in this particular case, she's not facing any charges related to anything that involved the harm of Gabriel Johnson.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading, relevance, calls for a legal conclusion.
There's 3 different objections there. It is technically leading. You can rephrase it and ask it the way you want to, whether she's facing charges for that. As to the other objections, they're overruled.
Detective, we've heard a lot of evidence regarding Elizabeth Johnson and the pretty awful things she said to Logan McQueary on December 27, 2009 about what she had done to Gabriel Johnson. Is the investigation involving Tammi Smith related to those statements by Elizabeth Johnson at all?
No.
Was there any evidence obtained that indicated that Tammi Smith ever wanted to harm Gabriel Johnson in any way?
No.
Now, we've heard, I believe it came from a question of another detective on cross-examination, when the question was, I believe Mr. Lee asked another detective that there was an Amber Alert issued in this case. Was there an Amber Alert issued in this case?
No.
Can you explain that?
Sure. Can I go over what an Amber Alert is?
Yes.
So the Department of Justice recommends the criteria for an Amber Alert is that we start off first with law enforcement confirming that we have an abduction. Then there needs to be the possibility of harm, serious danger, possible death to a child. The child needs to be 17 and under that age. Also, the child has to be entered into NCIC. And so with that criteria, can I go into the first day when I attempted to enter? So on December the 27th of 2009, on the first day, I did contact Arizona Department of Public Safety for an Amber Alert. Although at that time it was declined because Elizabeth Johnson, what we knew is that she was actually out of our state. So Arizona DPS declined that. And then I also worked along with Texas DPS, and they also declined, seeing it more as a custodial interference issue.
At some point in time, did the investigation reveal that Gabriel Johnson was in fact seen alive and well in San Antonio, Texas?
Yes.
And when was that date?
The last date was December 26th of 2009.
Were there any attempts to issue an Amber Alert after that information was received?
I made attempts to issue an Amber Alert both on December 27th and 28th of 2009.
And that was declined?
And both times, the first evening I spoke to a representative, provided what we had on that first day. And then on the second day, I completed an application, faxed that over to Texas DPS. But still, their position was that it was a custodial issue, and so they declined our request.
Now, at the time you were investigating this case, it involved missing baby Gabriel Johnson.
Yes.
At some point in time, did you begin to speak with Tammi Smith?
Yes.
And did you ever speak with her in person?
Yes.
And do you see her in the courtroom?
Yes.
Would you please describe where she's sitting and what she's wearing?
She is to my right. I see a gray top and a barrette in her hair.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant?
It shall so reflect.
Now, when you talked to the defendant, did you have any formal sit-down interviews with her?
Yes.
About how many formal interviews did you do with her?
4.
And did you speak to her on other occasions that you would not classify necessarily as formal interviews?
Yes.
Did you ever speak to her on the telephone?
Yes.
About how many times did you speak to her in a not formal interview situation?
I would estimate that would be about 8 times, if not more.
Now let me ask you this. When you spoke to Tammi Smith, did you record the conversations you had with her?
Yes.
And how did you do that?
I have a recorder that's issued by the department. And that's when she telephoned me on the phone, and at other times when she came into the station, we have a room that's set up just for interviewing, and that was recorded then.
Did you ever interview her at her home?
Yes, I did.
And did you record those conversations?
Yes, I did.
Did she always know she was being recorded?
I don't know if she always knew that she was being recorded. I have a habit of having a specific book where I have a pocket, and at times it will come out, will not come out. So I don't know if she actually knew she was being recorded.
Did you tell her she was being recorded?
No.
Now, if we were to play for this jury during the course of this trial, every conversation you ever had with Tammi Smith, approximately how long do you think that would take?
I think it would easily total, it could total 10 plus hours.
Now, unlike Mr. Lee, I don't want to invite anybody to throw things at us, so we're probably not going to play all of those. But have you and I discussed some of those that we think might be important?
Yes.
All right, why don't you tell us then, on December 27, 2009, how you first became involved in this case?
Sure. During the weekend of December 26th through the 27th of 2009, I was on call, and so this would require me to respond in a timely fashion to any calls that the patrol units were needed in terms of detectives and the Criminal Investigations Bureau. So on Sunday, December 27th of 2009, at approximately 4:30 in the evening, I received a call from Sergeant John King, and he was the on-call sergeant at the time. He provided me with basics on the telephone stating that we were needed for a missing child investigation and that possibly involved a homicide. And I said brief because that's pretty typical that it's a brief phone call. He asked me to respond to the location of 4605 South Priest, trailer home number 153 in the city of Tempe.
Detective Ramirez, what's at that location?
We then learned that is Elizabeth Johnson's trailer home. It's a large trailer home park across the street from the Arizona Mills Mall.
And did you actually respond to that location?
No, as I was preparing to get ready, I received a second call from Sergeant King, and he asked that I go ahead and respond to Tempe Police Headquarters at 120 East 5th Street in the city of Tempe.
And when you arrived at the Tempe Police Station, what happened?
He requested that I arrive there so that we could all participate in a briefing. This was approximately at 6 p.m. We had a briefing which was led by Sergeant Linson, who was the patrol sergeant at the time, Officer Snell, and other responding detectives were present, such as Detective Larson, Detective Ryberg, Sergeant King, and those are the only members that I recall right now.
Was Sergeant Linson present?
Yes, she was.
And how about Detective Aguilera?
Detective Aguilera, he wasn't present, but during a portion of the briefing, he actually telephoned and gave us an update.
And at that time, then, were you advised of what had been going on in the investigation at that point?
Yes.
Now, did you at any point in time try to make contact with anybody during that investigation that day?
Yes.
Who would you try and contact?
Well, after the briefing, different tasks were assigned. I was asked to remain at the station in hopes of contact with Elizabeth Johnson. What I had learned is that she had been calling from a 210 area code, which is designated for Texas. So other detectives were assigned to assignments outside of the field, and Sergeant King asked that I remain present. So soon after briefing, I started making a phone call to Elizabeth Johnson to see if I could reach her, although that was unsuccessful.
And at some point in time during that day, did you speak to Tammi Smith?
Yes.
Did you speak to her in person or on the phone?
On the phone.
Tell us about that.
Okay. During the briefing, what I had learned is that Logan McQueary had arrived at the police station earlier in the afternoon, and he had reported that he had received the text messages in reference to Elizabeth Johnson, his child. In that briefing, I also learned of a couple, Tammi and Jack Smith, who were making attempts to adopt the baby. Detective Aguilera had contact with the Smiths earlier during the month of December, so he actually, during the briefing, was sent to the Smiths to see if Elizabeth was there or Gabriel was there. During the briefing, he phoned in and said that they weren't at the location. And so roughly around 7:30 that evening, I had conducted a records check, and I found a phone number for a Tammi Smith. And I called her between the hours of 7:30 to 8 p.m. that night.
And did you actually talk to her at that time?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Detective, I'm showing you now the envelope for what's been marked as exhibit number 12. And in the envelope, was there a disc that you saw me put into our computer just a few minutes ago?
Yes.
And what's contained on this disc is in this envelope?
That's the first contact that I had with Tammi Smith on the 27th.
And is that an audio recording?
It's an audio recording.
And does the disc fairly and accurately reflect that conversation that you
Yes.
had? Your Honor, at this time I move to admit exhibit number 12.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 12 is admitted.
And Your Honor, I move to publish it.
You may publish it.
And for everybody's information, it's approximately 4 minutes and 30 seconds long.
I'm calling to see if you can help us out in terms of Elizabeth isn't answering her phone.
Right, and I even just sent her a really nice text. Do you want me to read it to you?
Sure.
I sent it right after the detectives left at 7:27. I said, the detective just left our house. Detective Aguilera is a nice man that doesn't like what Logan's dad is doing, and he wants to help you. He's a detective. Wait, it's got to go to the second one. A detective, and is way higher than a cop, because she thinks that, since the fact that his dad is the cop, he trumps anyone.
Sure.
I said, he said he can definitely help you. Call or text me, and I'll give you his number. That was at 7:27. She hasn't called me or texted me yet.
Okay.
And I tried calling her.
And what's the phone doing for you? I've been trying to call her.
It's almost like somebody's turning. My guess is sometimes I'll get, phone calls from patients late at night, and if I don't want to take the call, it's late at night, or it's a Sunday or whatever, and I'll just press end, and then it just makes them go to voicemail. But she does, because she's got a Cricket phone, it doesn't have a voicemail, so it seems to me like she's either pressing end or she or it's just out of service, you know what I mean, like out of the service area,
Sure.
So I don't know. What is it doing? Is it doing the same thing for you? Like, is it almost like it hangs up immediately? Mm-hmm. Oh, now it's just ringing and ringing?
It's ringing and ringing, and then it's busy.
Huh.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
That's even scarier to me than just ringing and it seems like it hangs up.
Well, I also don't have a block line, so if she's seeing a 480 number and she's not recognizing it, then she may not want to pick up. That's why I'm calling you.
Yeah, see, with me, hold on, and I'll call out. Stop it, baby, please. You're hurting mommy. Let me see when the last time I called her. I didn't call her since the detectives came. I called her. Baby, I need you to go see Daddy, please. Let's see. No, it's been texting, so let me see when the last time I tried. Let me go to her name here.
And whose phone number do you have for a contact in case she does call you back?
I have Detective Aguilera.
Okay, you do? Okay.
Detective Aguilera, if she calls or if I talk to her at all, then I'll get in touch with him.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to have that.
Okay, so it looks like the last call is 4:21 is when I tried to call her the last time.
Okay.
And it did do the same thing for me that I just told you, like it would ring 1 or 2 times and then it would hang up.
Okay.
So let me try right now to call her.
Sure.
And on my other line.
Okay.
And this is the line I always call her from, the one that I'm calling from right now because you're on my husband. So it's the main one. Normally by the second or third ring, it hangs up.
Okay.
Now, either if it's ringing or ringing, hopefully she ditched the phone. And because, I think if she did what everybody's saying she did, she may also do the same thing to herself if that's what she did. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that makes me nervous because it's ringing and ringing. But if she ditched the phone, then she wouldn't be hanging it up.
Right, right.
So we can only hope she ditched the phones.
Okay, the minute if she does communicate with you, if you can just call Frank and that would be great.
Yeah, and it's saying that either the phone is off or it's outside the coverage area.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having some issues anyway with it, trying it a couple of different ways. But if you hear anything, if you can just give us, I know you will, just give us a buzz and then we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Detective, after you talked to Tammi Smith, what was the next thing you did?
After I spoke to her, I also learned that she last saw Elizabeth Johnson on December 18th of 2009. And this was at a church that was described with having glass in a drive-through. So drive-through stood out for me. I used the internet and found that there was actually a glass and garden church located in Scottsdale. And Detective Ryberg and Detective Larson were asked to go to that location to search the area.
What is the address of that location?
May I look at my report?
If it refreshes your memory, yes.
Okay.
Let us know when you're ready to refresh.
It is the in the city of Scottsdale.
And Detective Ramirez, were you present when Detective Galbraith testified?
Yes.
And specifically, were you present when she testified about Elizabeth Johnson's bank account?
Yes.
And were you present when she testified that on December 18th at 5:55 p.m., Elizabeth went to a Chevron at 8823 East Chaparral in Scottsdale?
Yes.
Did you compare the address at 8823 East Chaparral to the address at 862?
I didn't compare it that night.
Have you since then?
Yes.
And what did you find about those two locations?
That it's about 1.3 miles in terms of distance.
And so the location where Elizabeth Johnson cleared out her account of $5 and change was very close to this church
Yes.
at 5:55.
Yes.
Do you know what time Tammi Smith stated that she met Elizabeth Johnson at that church?
She said she met Elizabeth Johnson during the early evening hours.
On December 27th, did you get some more information from any of the other detectives about the case?
Yes, Detective Elliot Campbell, he also was asked to respond to assist us in terms of the cellular phone that Elizabeth Johnson was using. He was asked to assist us with tracking and provide us with information.
And based on that information that Detective Campbell provided, did you make any phone calls?
Yes, he had informed me that there were 2 phone calls that were that there was communication between Elizabeth Johnson's phone and this local 480 number. He provided me with that number, and roughly at about 11:30 in the evening, I telephoned that number.
And who was the person at that telephone?
I spoke to a person who identified, well, at the time I couldn't tell if it was actually a male or a female, but the name was Soren Stanesco. And I identified myself and asked if I could arrive at the location to conduct an interview.
And did you at some point arrive at the location and conduct an interview?
Yes, at approximately 11:55 p.m., Detective Larson and I went to the location, which was 1007 West, pretty close to the station.
And did you find Gabriel Johnson at that location?
No, I conducted the interview with Soren, who is a male, and he confirmed that he had spoken.
Sustained.
Now, you had the telephone records that indicate contact.
Yes.
While you were there with Soren, were there any attempts to try and reach Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
And what attempts were made?
Since they did have communication, then I asked if he was willing to contact her number, and he dialed the number.
calls for hearsay.
That statement does not overrule.
You can answer.
And he dialed the number, but there was no response.
And you were there and saw him do this?
Yes, I was present.
Now, you indicated that you went out to Soren's residence, it sounds like the late night hours of December 27, 2009. How long were you there?
We were there till approximately about 1 o'clock in the morning.
What did you do after you were at Soren's residence?
So I returned to the police station, and then at approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, I contacted the Maricopa County Search Warrant Center, and I requested an emergency order of protection on behalf of Logan McQueary and Gabriel Scott Johnson.
And why did you do that?
I did that in hopes that we would be able to find Elizabeth Johnson and her son, due to her earlier statements that she had harmed him, with the hopes that she actually hadn't harmed him. This way we could remove the child from mom and put him in a safe environment, which at that time was Logan's, it would have been Logan's welfare.
And after obtaining that emergency order of protection, what was the next thing you did?
It was roughly about 3:30, about 4 o'clock, I went home about 4 o'clock in the morning, I went home after that.
Did you get some rest at that point?
I got kind of a nap, and then I returned the very next morning, Monday, about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Monday the 29th?
The 29th.
On the 28th, did you ever talk to Detective Thompson?
Yes. So the following day, I came in roughly about 10 o'clock in the morning, and my sergeant advised me that Detective Thompson would be assisting. So I provided him with a briefing of what we had just determined from the following day, from the previous day, sorry.
And did you have any more contact with Soren?
Yes, around noon, I went to his place of business, which was very close to the station, and I interviewed him in hopes of finding out if he had had any contact with Elizabeth.
Now, we've heard testimony that on December 28, 2009, there was a court hearing and Detective Duplessis testified at that court hearing. Were you advised of any information from that?
Yes. Detective Duplessis was present, and I learned that Elizabeth Johnson had not appeared with her son.
And did you learn what the result was of Elizabeth Johnson not appearing?
A Detective Duplessis, he continued with his responsibilities for the day, and a warrant was issued out for Elizabeth Johnson.
And was any information done or anything done in order to help locate Gabriel at that point?
Well, he and Elizabeth Johnson, they were both entered into NCIC at that time, which is the National Crime Information Center system, also into ACIC, which is our local. And that would, the reason for that is if there's a traffic stop or any type of contact, if Elizabeth was run, then she would come back, as well as her son, that she, of the situation of they would alert Tempe police. Also, the vehicle was entered into the system.
And after that was done, did you talk to anybody that afternoon, evening?
In the early afternoon, at approximately 3 p.m., I had received a call from Logan. He had advised me of the court.
It sounds like it is going to call for hearsay sustained.
When you talked to Logan, let me ask you this. Logan testified here, and he talked about speaking to you on that day and providing you information about a recording. Did he in fact do that?
Yes.
It's been testified to, and asking to confirm the witness's statement. I'm going to overrule it since the jury's already heard.
And did you actually obtain that recording from Logan on that particular date?
No, not on that date. It was later.
a recording of that. It's already admitted into evidence. Your Honor, permission to publish at this time?
You may.
Before we do that, Your Honor, I have copies of the transcript for the jury.
Okay. Let's go ahead and pass those out. We've got transcripts for you for what you're about to hear.
Your Honor, I have a copy for the court as well.
Thank you. And of course, defense counsel has one.
Yeah, I provided that to them previously, but if they need another copy.
Thank you.
Calling Tammi and Reggie. They just called me at 3 p.m.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Logan. Did she show up?
No, she didn't show up for court.
Okay. Have you heard anything at all?
No.
Yesterday? No?
Just want to let you guys know, basically you guys have pretty much caused this by helping her and done other things, you know. And, don't want you guys calling me anymore and don't want you guys, you guys are interfering with the ongoing investigation if you continue to do what you're doing. So,
You know what? I don't need to listen to this. I've heard the opposite from the lead detective, Tex Aguilera. So I don't need to listen to this. We've done everything we could possible to get her back here.
and don't call me back.
Detective, what happened after you talked to Logan on December 28, 2009?
Is that in reference to that recording or just in the day?
In reference to that recording.
Later, when I had contact with Tammi Smith, she had spoken of the contact with Logan, the recording that you're hearing. She had stated that he had threatened her during the phone call right after court.
And did you record that conversation with Tammi Smith?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Detective, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 14. It's the envelope that contained a disc. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes,
And was the disc that was contained in that envelope, is that being placed into our computer right now?
yes,
And is that the recording of the conversation you had with Tammi Smith on the 28th?
yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit exhibit number 14.
No objection.
Exhibit 14 is admitted.
Your Honor, permission to publish exhibit number 14.
You may publish.
Human Water, may I help you?
Hi, can I speak to Tammi, please?
This is her?
Hi, Tammi. This is Detective Ramirez with Tempe Police.
Oh, yeah, hi.
Hey, do you have a few minutes that I can talk to you?
Sure.
Okay. I have a question. Have you heard from Elizabeth since Sunday?
Yep. Wait. Since the last time I told you guys. I can't remember what day. Was it Sunday? Are you sure it wasn't Saturday?
No, I was called out. It was Sunday.
Okay. Well, whatever day it was that I told you guys, it's on my phone.
That was last contact. Okay. We're looking at using America's Most
Quiet.
and going complete national in terms of media and so forth, which is going to be a huge deal. And so that's where I'm trying to see, before we go that large, you haven't had any contact with her?
No, absolutely not. No, as a matter of fact, I'm just getting on MySpace to see if she posted anything lately, and you called and I messed it up, so I was almost there.
Oh, okay.
I'm about to look actually and see if she has posted anything. Hold on, let me see. I don't ever get on here. Wait, here it is. Okay, let's see. She did post something. It says 5 hours ago. It says, just my ass suckers.
Okay. When was that
And
posted?
it was posted 5 hours ago, and it says her mood is adventurous.
Okay.
So it sounds like to me that she's running with the baby, and she just figured she could get everybody off of her trail. That maybe she figured that he would give up, thinking that she killed herself and killed the baby. I don't know.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Okay.
I honestly don't believe that she hurt that baby.
You don't?
Because I don't believe she did.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, because I think I know her mentality better than that. If she wrote just my ass suckers, obviously that means I got away with this, or I'm getting away with this. And I would guess by her mentality. And I mean, I just can't imagine if somebody killed somebody that they would even say anything like that. They would just be like so scared they would be hiding, you know what I mean? And that sounds to me like she got away with getting the baby, or maybe she gave the baby to somebody and now she's, because she did mention it, at one time, maybe I'll just run away and I'll just change my hair color and cut my hair and, and all this stuff. So.
Have you had, I'm trying to reach the father, have you had any contact with Logan, or any info that he's given you, or any contact with him?
We did, like I told the cop yesterday, I tried calling him yesterday, because yesterday he had court at 1:30, so I waited about an hour after court, and I called to see if she had shown up to court.
Sure.
And he said no, and he got real ugly with me and told me not to call back, and he said that me and my husband are going to jail, and this is all our fault, and they're prosecuting us and all this stuff, and I said, Logan, we begged you not to threaten her. We almost had her back here. If you wouldn't have threatened her, we had an attorney set up for her to go to court with her. His whole deal was he didn't want her gaining custody, so he was mad at us for trying to help her. Okay. We didn't help her escape. We were trying to help her get her back, Okay. But he was very, very ugly, and then my husband called him back and
so your
told
husband
him,
called him?
Huh?
Your husband called him?
My husband called him right back and said, you need to talk to me. Don't talk to my wife that way. If you have something to say, talk to me. And he hung up on my husband. So we got home about an hour ago. This was yesterday. We got home about an hour ago, and my husband swore that Logan was at our house. I don't know who, because we live way out in the middle of nowhere, and nobody ever comes up our street that we don't know. Uh-huh. There's only like 4 houses, I think, out here. Sure. And the guy stopped, and he just stopped his car and looked at us. And we just kind of went around him. We were like looking, and my husband swore it was Logan. So I don't know.
Was that today?
Yes.
Okay.
About an hour ago.
Okay. And you guys haven't had any further contact with Logan?
No, but twice today he keeps asking me to be his friend on Facebook. You know how you get I have a BlackBerry, and I keep getting requests for him, and I keep ignoring, like I press ignore,
okay.
Because, he said, don't ever call him again. Don't leave us alone, he said.
Okay.
So I don't know what that means.
Let me, if this ends up being a case in terms of a criminal case and so forth, are you guys willing to aid in prosecution against Elizabeth? Would you be willing to assist us in terms of against her?
We will not lie. We will tell the truth, but are we going to try to help you prosecute her? I don't know. We're not for either way. We're for, if we get called into court, we'll go to court and we'll tell the truth. But are we going to pick sides and say we're going to do everything we can to make it sound ugly? No, I wouldn't do that. But
I'm asking you on a criminal investigation if you're willing to assist the police.
Okay. Then yeah.
And I am asking you if you're willing to aid in prosecution.
I just want that baby found. Yeah, I just want the baby found. That's our most important goal here is to find the baby. So we'll do whatever you guys need us to do, as long as we're doing it legally and as long as we're telling the truth. We're not going to lie or anything.
Well,
I mean, there
asked
was
you to lie, so I'm not even understanding that statement. I'm just telling you.
Okay.
Why would the
Okay.
police ask you to lie? I mean, we're not asking that.
You know,
so.
when you say would we aid in prosecution,
Yeah,
I just think of movies, you know? I just think of what I've seen in movies.
It's not movies, but the police are not, we're not going to ask you to lie. But if we have a case, if we have someone who's harmed a child, my question to you was, are you willing to aid in prosecution? We are not, you would never even hear out of my mouth, are you willing to lie for the police?
Right, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for your help.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Now, Detective, at the time of this conversation, had you heard the recording from between Logan and Tammy?
No.
And at the time of the conversation, did Tammi Smith seem to be aware that Logan had recorded that conversation? Now, the exhibit indicates that was December 28, 2009. Was that telephone call on December 28, 2009?
Yes.
It appeared that Tammi Smith said she talked to Logan about court yesterday in this phone call.
That she had spoken to him yesterday. Court was on the 28th, and that phone call was the 28th.
And so court was actually that same day, because the 27th would have been Sunday. Is that right?
Yes, court was on the 28th.
Did you do anything else regarding this investigation on December 28, 2009?
Like I said earlier, I had contacted Texas DPS for the Amber Alert, and I also contacted the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which I had contacted initially on the 27th. But on the 28th, the case was actually assigned to someone who would assist us in terms of creating a poster for law enforcement, and Detective Thompson assisted with that also.
And since we're talking about the National Center for the Missing and Exploited Children, can you tell us who, if I didn't ask you already, who Ron Olive is?
Ron Olive is from Team Adam, from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And on an investigation such as this, and we refer to that center as NCMEC, so then NCMEC will send us a representative, and he assisted us throughout the investigation. Whenever it was law enforcement sensitive, like in our briefings, then Ron stepped out of the room. And so that we made sure that things that were just for us, but he pretty much was with us during this whole investigation.
Was there anything else you did in regard to the investigation on December 28, 2009?
May I glance at my notes?
If it refreshes your memory, please do.
No.
Let's move on to December 29, 2009. What's the first thing you did that day?
I need to look at my notes if you're okay. At the start of that day, Detective Thompson had informed me about Elizabeth Johnson's MySpace account, and I'm referring to when she made a posting, Kiss My Ass Suckers. When she did that posting, then Thompson informed me early in the morning. Detective Larson then assisted to follow up on the IP address off of that computer, which is pretty much like a telephone. My understanding is like a telephone line, to see if we could find tracking on her computer.
And then when did you actually learn that information?
Then Detective Larson, he was able to find the IP address coming back to a Broward County school district located in Florida. So he provided me with a name of Dave Settles. I then contacted Dave Settles. I explained our investigation and that we were trying to find the tracking of this computer. He then referred me over to Miami-Dade Library, stating that actually the IP address was owned by them, and that due to it being a library system, that it would be too difficult to find out exactly which computer that communication was coming from. Also, I'm going back and...
Let's go question and answer, getting into a little bit of narrative. Go ahead.
What else did you do that day?
And at 10 o'clock in the morning, I called Tammi Smith to see if she would volunteer to a police interview.
And did she agree?
Yes, she did.
Did you make arrangements to have that interview?
Yes, I did.
Did you do anything else between making those arrangements with Tammi Smith and then actually having the interview with her?
Not that I can recall.
Where did you interview Tammi Smith on that day?
At her residence.
And were you alone when you interviewed her?
No, Detective Ryberg came along with me.
And when you arrived at the residence, approximately what time of day was it?
2 p.m.
And when you talked to Tammi Smith, did you talk to her by herself?
No, her husband Jack Smith was present and their daughter was in the background.
And who was asking the questions in this particular interview?
Both Detective Ryberg and I were asking questions.
In that interview, what did you and Tammi Smith talk about?
Tammi, at the start of that interview, informed me of the reasons why Elizabeth Johnson wasn't returning to the state of Arizona. I also learned background information as to how Tammi met Elizabeth Johnson. I learned that, can I talk about what I learned of how they met?
If she told you that, you can report what she told you.
Okay. I learned that they had met approximately 7 months prior during a layover in Indianapolis, that Gabriel Johnson was approximately 5 pounds at the time, and that Elizabeth Johnson appeared to be depressed, according to Tammi. I also learned that Tammi stated after the layover and arriving in the state of Arizona that Tammi felt devastated for days because she hadn't heard from Elizabeth Johnson. I learned that Tammi stated that they were also thinking of adopting Elizabeth Johnson, even though she was an adult, and that Gabriel Johnson could be their grandson, that they could live at their residence, but in a place that she called their casita, like a smaller house outside of their home. And I also learned I did ask her if Logan did not agree to the adoption, how they would handle that.
What was her response to that question?
She spoke about using her attorney and making Logan responsible for back child support, current child support, making him responsible to appear for visitation. And she stated that through stress, she believed that he would, actually she used the term screw this, and that he would sign the adoption paperwork.
Detective, I'm going to show you the envelope for exhibit number 40. Did that exhibit contain the CD that we're now placing in our computer from that interview?
Yes.
This is on December 29th, 2020.
Yes.
And does this recording accurately reflect the interview that you did with Tammi Smith on that date?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I move to admit exhibit number 40.
Any objection?
No, you're good.
Exhibit 40 is admitted.
Your Honor, I'd like permission to publish the exhibit.
You may.
Your Honor, I will advise that this is an hour and 13 minutes long. I'd like to go ahead and start it, even though we're going to have a break here in about 15 minutes.
Okay, yeah, let's get to it. The jury knows it's going to last a little while, so why don't we play the first 15 minutes or so before lunch.
Your Honor, since it's so long, maybe the second half permission to sit back?
She can. You don't have to stay up there.
Gorgeous.
Detective, I'm sorry, can you go ahead?
Sure. Fairly in the newspaper in terms.
Was there some conversation between you and Detective Ryberg as you're walking up to the house in this?
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead and start this at 3 minutes. Is that when the interview actually started, when you started talking to Tammi Smith and Jack Smith?
Yes.
And at the time, you're walking up to the residence. Was your recorder already on?
Yes.
Okay, now.
Thank you.
Okay, Hannah, where are you?
I just started painting today, so I started cutting in. Then I see the table.
Nice color. Okay, why don't you wash
I seen that mess, yeah, that's isn't that the remake of the Hayden Nelson? Yeah.
the parent trap.
There we go. Printer trap.
Okay, because somebody's here doesn't mean that you're gonna It's still your nap time, but it's still time to take a nap. So here.
My favorite vertical checkers. 4 or 5-ish.
Or at least this house. Hey, I'm gonna borrow. Can I borrow one of your pens?
Yeah, maybe got 2.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what role do you guys play?
Okay, well, you know what? We kind of want to start this whole thing over. Since Sunday, like you were just saying, I think we need to. We just want to know what's going on. Not that you know, but
Bottle of water?
oh, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Hey, here's what we've got going on.
Yeah.
I'm the lead investigator here. I know Frank had come out, Detective Aguilera had come out, and so forth. And pretty much our position is it's almost become this big, you know, in terms of everything with Elizabeth. And yet, hold on, that's too loud. And yet, I'd love to see it come big. Bring this whole mess. That's what he was saying, that we just are wanting to start all over. And really, the goal is to see how we can help Elizabeth get those high heels off. In a sense, turn herself in, you know, not have this become a big mess for her, and how we can use you guys to help her, and so forth.
Well, you know, we've tried for the past week and a half, however long it's been. The problem was we were stupid enough to give Logan her phone number, and because of that, his threats scared her and she didn't come back. I don't know if there's anything more we can do unless if I mean, because like I sent her the email, but I didn't know your name yet, so I sent her Detective Aguilera's phone number and name and said that, you know, because he told me, he said, you know, this is wrong what Logan and his father have done to her, and she's not in any trouble as long as she hasn't hurt the baby, you know.
Right.
So she basically, you know, I read the email to you that I'm not coming back, you know. So she really has it in her head that people do it every day. They change their whole identity and cut their hair and change their, you know, but she has a distinct look to her. And, you know, and I don't care what color her hair, because I've seen pictures of her with her hair pulled back. I've seen pictures of her with her blonde hair, with her dark hair, and she looks like the exact same person. I mean, it's very, very easy to...
How long have you known Elizabeth?
I met her, I I was at a convention 7 months ago and met her in the airport. I spent the day with her because we had like a 4 to 6 hour layover.
Where at the layover?
I don't remember. I know she was coming from Boston. I was coming from Indianapolis. So I don't.
So you're coming from Indy, and she's coming from
Boston. Yeah, I think it was in Indianapolis. Actually, is where
her grandmother lives, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was when? How long ago? Months ago?
About 7 months. The baby he looked like he was about 5 pounds. And she wanted me to adopt the baby at that time.
during your airport.
Yeah, like we met.
That first date?
Yeah, we met, and she was wanting to put the baby up for adoption. When I saw her sitting there, she looked like she was so depressed. You could tell with her whole expression, she was saying, "Somebody come shoot me."
And she had the baby with her then? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you could tell, every now and then she'd just like wipe a tear, and she just couldn't handle it. But really the problem was Logan. She knew that she was on her way home, and she knew that he has already broken in her apartment and stole everything from what her friends told her and sold everything she had. She was hoping the baby's crib was still there.
Can we?
Go ahead. Well, that's fine. Well, yeah, it kind of feels something. We don't know these people at all. How do you know how Logan and Elizabeth met? How long they've been together?
I think they met in junior high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can you go back to, so that's important to me. So the first day that you meet her, she brought up adoption to you?
Well, I think what Tammy was saying is she wasn't ready to give Tammy the baby. She was talking about this was one of her options, adoption.
Sure.
She didn't
That's
say,
what her and the
hey,
grandmother had just finished talking
But
about.
that's what I'm asking.
Right.
And I'm not assuming anything.
Right.
I just wanted you to give me more info on what she was
Yeah, she wanted to do that, but she knew that Logan probably would not sign papers, and
What was her demeanor then in talking about that? I mean, going back to that day, that's an important day, the first day that you met her.
back to that day, she was very depressed and very scared of Logan. I mean, she was more scared of Logan back then than she was now.
And was he with her anywhere? Or do you know where he was at that point?
No, she was
okay.
coming.
Just alone.
Her and the baby went alone to Boston
to grandma's.
to flee away from him because I don't. She will never go into detail of any abuse that he has done towards her physically and things like that. I know he abused her very badly, and so her and the baby fled when the baby was probably a week old, maybe.
Okay.
And she left, went to grandma's. She stayed at grandma's maybe a week, and then she was on her way back.
I think another important thing, and I wasn't there, so but I just know what Tammy said, is Tammy had all this time with her in the airport. So then on the plane, for some reason or another, she was flying first class. Tammy was back in coach. And after the plane got up, she came back and brought the baby back. Coach, where Tammy was, and said, "Would you like to hold the baby?" And Tammy said, "Yeah." Tammy wound up holding the baby the whole flight.
Yeah.
So,
the whole flight you ended up holding the baby?
Yeah. Well, she came back there. She didn't say, "Would you like to hold him?" She said, "Do you want him?" And me, somebody who's wanting to adopt a baby, this was like, wow, God must have had us have this layover, so I could spend, those 4 to 6 hours talking to her and finding out about her and everything about her, and then getting on that flight. She went as soon as we got up in the air. She brought me the baby, and I was devastated for days after that. I really thought that was the baby God was sending me, and I just didn't understand why she didn't call me.
And he gave her number. Said, if you are serious about the adoption process, give us a call.
Okay.
Tammy got back from that. She called me from I'll never forget. She was calling me, and I just so we understand. I'm the adoption process. I'm okay with but it's been Tammy, and because Tammy grew up in a very family where sisters were together and sisters were together, and it was vitally important. My family structure was 6 years apart. So albeit my brother and sister are very important to me, it wasn't all that. I hear you. So she was wanting it for so Tammy. I remember Tammy calling me saying, "You know what? I think this is the one. I think we've got. I think that we've got all this. Had all this happen." So So she was very excited in getting back and telling me about it.
Get your real pajamas on. She
All of a
keeps
sudden,
changing her clothes.
no calls. We never even heard it off. So
I know, that's why I want you to get them.
Yeah. Well, no, that's good because see, our
Look at me. I'm sorry.
You know,
hold
I
on
think
one
the
second,
big-
please.
oh, that's fine.
Hey, you're supposed to be taking a nap. You're taking advantage. Now go lay down and
we'll
watch
try to
your
be
movie.
quick, sweetie. Because really, the big picture of this, we think it's probably just custody issues between
Daddy.
I'm sorry.
Hannah?
Just bring me the remote. I'll turn it up a little.
I can talk over it.
The custody issues.
It's all.
And that's not what the police are interested in. I mean, that's a family court thing, and it happens all the time with a total amount of people all the time. But of course, the text Sunday scared everybody. So we need to know what this.
Now, was it a text or was it a recording? Because
Wasn't it a
she
text,
says it was
then
a
a phone
text,
call?
and then one of the cops said that he heard a recording that Logan recorded the message or recorded their. You know what I mean?
Well, there's parts to the investigation
Right.
that I have to tell you. It's turned into an open investigation that we have to keep to
Right.
ourselves.
yeah.
And it's not really that important. I'll tell you in reality, whether it's a text or whether it's a voice message, it is that come Sunday, it is what it is in the sense of why we were then called and so forth. And it has come down. I will have to say, driving all over wherever she is and so forth, you can either make something a big incident in terms of who gets involved, and anytime if we had a kidnapping or a possible homicide or anything, you're looking at FBI, you're looking at marshals, you're looking at police, you're looking at this
Huge.
huge
It
mess.
snowballs.
Versus, you know what? If there's a custody dispute, it really it is a family court issue. In that sense, it happens every day where we have disputes.
Right.
And I'd much rather, pretty much where we're at is, and all we needed even on Sunday, Sergeant Linson made contact on Sunday, and basically it was just go to any law enforcement officer and let's just verify that he is with you, that Gabriel's safe, and we're done. It's that simple. It is, but when we don't have, and we can't do it via a picture,
okay.
Right.
we can't do it via an email.
Okay, so I
Anyone
can tell
type
her.
that.
What about an attorney? An attorney?
No,
No.
it has
It's gotta be law enforcement.
I mean,
Okay.
it's now turned into, I'm going to tell you, it's turned into a huge mess.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, just bringing it down. No, it has to be a law enforcement because at this point, it's an investigation. So we
Okay.
can't really trust in terms of, we don't work with attorneys. We are law enforcement. If you make a statement, you make a threat, you now make something that we have to react to. We don't go to a third party in the sense of.
What about a CPS worker in another
We
state?
can't.
Let me.
I know she's
hang
so
on, hang on just a second. Please
What?
forgive me.
Okay, what?
One thing that's important for you to understand. Every contact that we have with her, you know that. Okay? We have not had any contact with her and don't know if we can have any contact with her. You do know about the most recent email this morning?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we call it?
All right.
Yes.
So it's important to understand because what I'm hearing over on this table, it's almost like you're saying, okay, you guys need to talk her into going into the.
No, I'm explaining what we have.
Yeah, what we did Sunday.
Sure.
Sunday when we got that, we just we're like, okay, well, we just need to verify. It was a welfare check.
Sure.
We just want to know, is he okay? And she said, well, I really can't do that. So, well, if to keep it in the custody realm between two people, just do that, and then we're out. Now it's gotten to the point where it's gotten bigger than that.
Yeah.
And now we want to go back to the basics and say, is she okay, and is Gabriel okay?
So would it be okay for me in an email, because that's why I was like, I can't even call you back because it doesn't, when you first called, I didn't know what to say on the email last night. And is it okay for me to say, because I don't want this to come out and somebody eventually comes to me and says, you helped her get away or
Right.
something,
Yeah, absolutely.
So in order to make sure he's okay, can I say, where was I going with that? I had a good idea.
To go somewhere to an
No,
agency?
Well, to address that, my only idea why I was speaking directly to you is if you have contact contact, if obviously she had contact with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth responded, okay? I think it's important for whoever's her support
To get
group
that.
Yeah, you seem to be the people she
to
know,
understand that, I mean, just like if I had an issue, any family member, you're there as a support, and if something's turning into a big mess, but you're the link, you're the link, and if
what I
you
had
can
to say.
help someone who's close
Hang on to
to
that
you,
thought.
Yeah.
there you go. It's just like if
I'm
it's just because there's a
I'll
link
forget.
here. I mean, there's a reason why we're here at
Sure.
your house,
Yeah.
and it's just a link. And my contact.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take our lunch break. We're at noon, so we'll come back at 1:30, presumably pick up where we left off. Until then, remember the admonition, and we'll see you at 1:30. Have a good lunch.
All rise.
Presence of the jury panel, Ms. Smith and counsel. Welcome back, everyone. We left off, we were in the early stages of listening to Exhibit 40, which was Detective Ramirez's interview. So we can start that again. Detective Ramirez is going to stay down there, correct?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so we go ahead and start the audio again. It should be on.
Well, we had a run through the other table, so we're on it.
Okay, we're good? Okay.
Just here, it's with everyone. So actually, I mean, she's just one of many that, hey, if we can get the word out there, that let's keep it simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I do believe that it's coming down. I mean, we're struggling with the custodial issue here. And, of course, I always hope that there's no danger and so forth. I mean, we can't take away what happened on Sunday. But for anyone that's out there, and if they know her, sure. I mean, keep it simple. And she just needs to, the whole goal here is Gabriel. Is he safe and so forth. And we just can't verify that through.
Yeah, and that's what we haven't been able to do since Sunday. We just need to know that he's.
Yeah, we can't verify.
And then it is just a custodial thing. And at this point, police are involved now in custody. We do try to stay out of that, but at some point we do. But again, it's still. The reason we're involved in a custodial thing is because somebody is going against a court. Which is just like, a beer run. You're going against the law and the judge says don't do that. She's going against a court now. So then that does involve the police. But it's just a matter of getting together with a judge and saying, well, I'd like this to happen, and Logan to say, I'd like this to happen, and you guys seem to be, even though you haven't known her that long, very integral part of her life. And, maybe then you guys will have to say, well, we'd like this to happen. But we can't do that if she's who knows where she's at, so and we're just trying to find an in
I have
to
a
her.
line of thought in there.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
What I would like to say to her, and I keep losing that train of thought, is, if you can go to any police station and bring your boss, she said that her boss was understanding and all that stuff, bring your boss, go to the police station, and let them verify that he is safe and he is secure and all that, and then you may leave. If you can do that, then they're not going to do this, what is it called, the America Most Wanted, and then you won't have to be hiding all the time.
Absolutely.
So I want to be able to say that to her, because if she understands that if you don't do this, then you're going to have to be literally hiding,
Right.
and they will have your face plastered everywhere. You won't be able to take him to a doctor. You won't be able to go to the store. You won't be able to work a job if there's any kind of customers that see you, because the next thing you know, you're going to be in a bathroom stall one day going potty, and somebody's going to barge open and handcuff you and take you to prison. But if you bring him, then you're off scot-free. And I want to be able to,
It's simple. I mean, our only step here is really if someone threatened to have harmed a child or have harmed a child. Well, of course, that's our step. We need to verify that, and it's pretty much we're done. It's simple. I mean, it really comes. And then, what I say to people, hey, your custody issues, you're going to have to go through family court.
And that's what I've been trying to tell her all this time. This is something to do with the court, and not to do with going to jail.
Yeah, it's just too messy for us. I mean, my gosh, we would have too many parents. This is an ongoing, everyday family court issue that sadly people sometimes use their kids and they cannot agree, and that's why we have family courts. But we just have bigger fish and we have other things that we really need to worry about.
Yeah.
But she's slowly building it up into that big thing that we're going to have to be involved in. If she
Well-
just,
My line that I'm wanting to ask, and mine sort of coincides with what she said, only mine's been a little more pointed. If she were to walk into a police station today and say, I want to verify that this is what it is, will she walk out of there?
I have no, more than likely, but that she should be worried about that. She should be worried
She
about
has her boss bring the baby in.
She is worried about that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And she bring
anything right now.
somebody else bring the baby in.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like a scale, and this is very good, and this is not the closer she can get to that. So yeah, have her boss bring the kid, and that puts her here. If she brings it in, that puts her here. If she comes in and healthy, happy, that brings her more and closer to good. But she's getting farther away, and anything.
That's what I told her before. I said, if you run, because she would come up with all these scenarios of what she's going to do. I'm like, you don't want to run. If you run, it may be a week, it may be a month, it may be 2 years or 5 years, but they will find you. And the longer you've been gone, the longer you're probably going to go to jail.
She's young, and how old is she?
23.
Yeah, she's young. She's got a kid, under a year old. Just if she contacts you again, emails you, texts you, however the gamut of electronic communication today, try to make her feel that she's one of millions of girls in the same position. That the whole system, it may not be wonderful, but it will work. The only way it can work is if it works. And it can't work with her gone. She has to be here and maybe take her lumps a little bit and say, you know what, I was alone, I was scared.
I know her well enough that she's not coming back here.
Okay. Well, anywhere, where she's at, wherever she's at.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not especially attached to her. She can go wherever she's at and say, I'm so-and-so, this is my kid, we're fine. She took her kid, she's the mother, okay? She's probably thinking, I'm the mother, I can take my kid wherever I want.
That's exactly what she thinks.
Exactly.
That's what
and at
she
that
says.
point, that's true. But the farther she doesn't communicate with the system, which unfortunately, a guy is involved, and he is on the birth certificate as the father, and I'm assuming he's the biological father.
Would the judge be willing to? The judge that did this, would he be willing to talk to her? It's probably Billy, honey. Yes, the judge. That's
what they do.
I'm not saying that the judge was the problem, but the judge's assistant would not.
They do. They
did not want to talk to her and said that the judge didn't want to talk to her, and basically they wanted me to tell her that if she doesn't do this, you're going to be in trouble.
Well,
And so she ran.
Yeah.
And that's the day she ran. And and she feels like everything and everybody is against her.
Right.
I know she doesn't feel that way with us, but if the judge, if she could email the judge on somebody else's email or something like that, and if the judge says, look, I am telling you, if you go here, you will not be arrested. Make sure the baby's fine. I don't know.
Here's how I work, Tammy. Okay, I'm the case agent here, so it's going to come down to here's my style. Okay? I'm not about tricks. I'm not about lying to people, and why that is in 2 years, most people that I deal with, there's a high likely that I'm going to see them again. Okay, and the way I believe is, okay, if I trick you here, okay, you're not going to trust me year 4, year 3 if you mess up. And those are mainly criminals,
right?
Because sadly, people tend to repeat, what was normal to them. And so here, it's very simple. It really is going to come down to this. I mean, she, out of her own responsibility, has put herself in a mess. She's put herself in a bind from Monday. Okay, when I was trying to reach her on Sunday, because Sunday, all I was going to tell her is, you have a court appearance, show up for that. I like people to keep things very simple for themselves. Go to any law enforcement officer and just show us that, you were angry, you were emotional, you were pissed off at Logan, whatever that is. You were off your meds. You were on meds. Your excuse is your excuse, and that's fine with me. But let's just show that we don't have a homicide. We have Gabriel safe, and we're done. We are flat out shut this down. We are done. Because our concern at that point, it's not a custody concern. I'm a sex crimes detective. I don't get caught up in people's custody issues. I don't have time for people's custody issues. You know, it comes down to, do we have a homicide, or do we have just simply we had two people that got angry, and we all say things I think that we regret when we're angry. Okay, so we have safety there. We're done. I would be working on other cases that I've just got. Sadly, I am too busy of a person in terms of as the sex crimes detective. So now, when it comes down to someone who's put themselves in a bind, now we're Monday, you missed your court date, and she is going to have to answer to that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And she knows that as a responsible adult, when we miss something, you've got to answer to that. Do I believe that that's prison? No, that's family court. You know, can you have a fine? Can you work something out with the judge? Absolutely. And that's where I would tell anyone, don't make a big mess out of really nothing. Just show up and, you know, hey, you were even traveling back home and you had a delay from 6, you know, something happened, you had a flat, you're out somewhere. I mean, you have to take that in account that, okay, I didn't show up for court for this reason. But where we still are is it is what it is, that if you made a threat that you've killed your son, we are not going to dance around, well, the boss takes your son, and, well, you type to the judge. I am not going to lie to you. It is simple. She either comes down to you go to a law enforcement officer, because that's who it's now turned into a criminal investigation, right? You go, you show that he's alive, he's safe, and we're done. Now, my part, hey, I'll tell her any day, you have to answer to a custodial issue that you have with family court. But in the big scheme of things, it's not a homicide. In fact, I use that normally as my example to people. When I tell people, you keep things simple, we're not dealing with a homicide. We're dealing with something that's like a misdemeanor crime or something that's a low class. Like, this is something that is not going to ruin your life. You just go answer to that, and you were angry, and you were fearful of Logan, and you didn't feel strong enough emotionally that day. Whatever it is, family court, guess what? That's all they hear all day long. They hear excuse after excuse, and you don't hear that people go to prison because of those type of issues. That is a family court issue, and it's good that they're there because we have those problems, but that's not my concern here. So my concern here is, okay, do I have Gabriel safe? And now can I move on to another investigation that sadly needs my attention here? So it's not, I mean, I don't want to lie to you, and I'm not going to. And I don't want to present something that's not available in the sense that, you write to the judge. No, she has created a mess, okay, but it still is in a spot where I believe she can recover from it. Okay, if she was on the phone with me, that's exactly what I'd tell her. I'd say, you need to recover from this. Do not make this turn into a huge mess for you. And you're right, America's Most Wanted now creates a mess for her. You get the FBI involved, it creates the mess. We have so many resources. She's traveling with the baby. It now puts them both in danger. And for that reason, let's say someone is stopped in a stolen vehicle. Well, that stop is at gunpoint, and it creates danger because if you reach for a phone, maybe someone perceives it as a gun. And what I'm saying is now you have something that's a simple, like when people take a family vehicle, I go, oh my gosh, return it, because you don't want the ripple effects of what this can now create for you. And the same thing, she's traveling with a baby.
From her email, it looks as though, she says she's got a full-time job and the boss is helping her. And
here or somewhere else?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
She said that she can't tell me or anyone else where she's at, and she's changed her name or whatever.
And here's where things change for people, and that's why I want some insight from you. And, if you guys can reach out, great. If you can't, we're going to go to all family and everyone else, because I believe that somewhere, maybe she'll listen to someone and she'll keep it simple. Now, when it's out of my hands, I'm woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning because the U.S. Marshals or someone has her. Okay, that's out of my hands. And it's a matter, it does come down. And if she was on the phone with me, I'd tell her, you want to keep it simple, well, I've got it, but once it kind of goes out of my hands and this becomes an international issue or this becomes a federal issue, you will have to answer to whoever is the agent come that high level. Like, it's no longer as simple as I've been trying to keep it for you. And so, and so I it's just going to turn into that. It will be what it will be, and it's out of my hands. And the way I walk away is I feel good because as an officer, I tried to help someone. And I tried to say, hey, just take care of yourself, keep it simple.
You know the sad part about this whole thing, and I know we're you got more important things to do than us to get on a soapbox, but we almost had her back here.
Oh, I believe it. I believe she was close.
She was close to coming back.
She was close.
She was saying, okay.
She was because she was paid up in her hotel, she said, until Sunday. And she was heading back.
When did she tell you that? I don't know that I
It was probably
It was about Friday, wasn't it?
Friday or Saturday, because we told her, look, we can adopt you, and even though you're an adult, you can adopt an adult. He will be our grandson. We've got a casita out there. You've got your own doors to go outside and leave, come and go as you please. We've got an attorney. Our attorney was ready to go to court for her on Monday, and the baby would still have his room upstairs, and we would still kind of be like the adoptive parents for her, so she didn't have to deal with being a mother. And we would bring the baby to Logan on his visits, and we would pick him up. Logan would never know where she was or how to contact her. She'd be free of all that. She could go to college, and she was very, very happy. And then Logan called her the next morning and started threatening her again, like he had threatened us, that she's going to
Threaten her how? Physically?
You're going to prison.
Okay.
They've sent an Amber Alert out for you. You're going to prison, and it's too late for you. And and it's like, come on. And he told us pretty much the same thing, and told us that anybody helping her is going to go to prison too. And and this was already a done deal. So I mean, she was scared to death. I can't come back now. And her words to us in a text was, I can't come back. I'd rather DIE than go to jail.
Let's go over some things. Go.
Also, I'm not going to drag this point out any further.
Okay.
But one of the things, I don't know that it's been brought up, so that's the reason I'm doing it, because I think it's important, is Logan's father is a police officer.
Right. Oh, he kidnapped the baby too about a month ago from daycare.
He went to the daycare. He was not on the daycare number.
Not only was he not on there, I'm sorry.
He was on there for not picking
Who are we talking about? Grandfather or father?
Logan's father, the grandfather, who is a cop. And
not Logan's grandfather.
Retired.
The grandfather.
Yeah.
It would be
The grandfather, the guy that's the Phoenix Reserve officer.
Whatever, but as far as Elizabeth knows,
that I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Logan's father. It's Gabriel's grandfather.
Right.
He was actually listed as cannot pick up the baby.
Okay.
He goes, flashes his badge, walks away with the baby.
What city was that in? I don't know of any
Tempe,
of that.
I believe it was in Tempe. That was about a month and a half ago, maybe.
What daycare center are we talking about?
I don't know. I can
where
get,
it's at?
and that could be my in with Elizabeth too. We need to know the name of the daycare center. He's in trouble. We need you to, because she thought, well, why he's not getting in trouble for that. He can steal my baby. I'm going to go to prison.
Report on that because that didn't come up.
No, she didn't make a report on it. What happened was, her and Logan got into a fight. The baby was at the daycare. And that's so funny because Logan told the judge that the baby was there in his, and the baby was at daycare. So what happened was he got Elizabeth arrested because somebody's going to go to jail. So he got Elizabeth arrested. She's the one who broke the window. And, that was her
that
place.
Over the criminal damage? Was that when Elizabeth was arrested? So it was that same day?
It was that day.
Okay.
And instead of waiting for her to call somebody to pick him up, he sent his dad immediately, you go get the baby. And she had her best friend and her grandfather, and other people on there who should pick up the baby. I know proper protocol is if somebody doesn't come pick up this baby, you go to the list and you call the people who's on the list. It's been done with her when they couldn't get a hold of me when she had not strep throat?
Exactly.
She had 104 fever. They couldn't get me on this phone. I was in with a patient, and they 2 seconds later immediately start calling everybody on the list. But instead, immediately Logan's father went there and said, "I'm a police officer and I'm his grandfather. you're giving me the baby. So they gave him the baby. And she got the baby back about a week later. I think she got out of jail. It was just an overnight. She got out of jail on bail the next morning. And he wouldn't give her the baby. And finally, after a week, him and his dad got tired of having the baby. And she didn't know what to do. She just thought, I can't, because she can't, in her mind, she can't win because he's a cop. And Logan told me he was retarded. He was retarded. Logan told me he was retired. But as far as Elizabeth knows, no, he is one of the top investigator cops here in Arizona, and she better, do what he tells her. And Logan's father has threatened her many times from what she's said.
Well, in reality, I mean, you're dealing with Tempe officers, and I don't know who I said, we don't do favors. We are rarely in the newspaper in terms of anything bad because, I mean, we're held to a high standard, which I love our department for that, okay? There's no favors. We did a simple interview. I talked with Dad Sunday night, and I haven't spoken to him since because unless you really play a key role here, okay, I've got other things to keep busy with. So because he's an officer, to me, that's what he does for a living, or if he's a reserve officer, that's what he does for a living. Good for you. And, move away, step aside if you're just not important to this investigation. And so I've received I don't have phone calls from him asking, well, hey, from one cop to another. I don't do that because I'm not going to get myself caught up in a mess. Right. That then goes to me and it goes to my family. And, that's my importance in the sense that I'm not going to get myself in, I'm not going to do a favor for someone.
Right.
That's the only reason I brought that up.
And then the CPS thing.
Sure, I think she feels very afraid of that
Because the dad,
understand that.
and I believe, because I've dealt with CPS, actually in Tennessee it's DCS, because we adopted Hannah, and the first 2 years of her life, we had to deal with CPS coming all the time, and we had to go to court, and we had to do so many different things for 2 years until everything was final. Mom got the rights taken away, and we adopted her. Okay. But in those 2 years, I dealt with so many people through DCS. Back then it was DCS. Okay. This CPS worker called me ugly and mean a couple weeks ago. I want to see the baby, and I want you to meet me at Elizabeth's house at whatever time. I'm like, okay. She came to Elizabeth's house the day or a couple days before to Elizabeth, and it's like,
do you know that CPS worker's name? I can find it.
I will have to find it, but I'm sure I can find it.
And that
was CPS.
CPS,
Okay.
yes.
Why was CPS out? What was the allegation? Do you know?
There was no allegation. It was because Logan called CPS on her and said he told her about what happened about breaking the window a month and a half, 2 months prior.
I'll double check.
And so because of that, she's not fit to have a baby. I don't know what in the world he could have told her. But she had a meeting with Elizabeth. Everything looked fine. She's normal. Everything's fine. We have the baby. Okay. She calls us. We bring the baby over there. That lady was literally, she's standing up like this, and I said one word, and don't you dare talk. I am talking at her. I'm not talking to you.
Beach.
I'm thinking, why did you want me here? And she's just sitting there. And then when she's all done saying her say, I honestly, in my heart of hearts, believe that Logan's father must have known this lady and basically wanted to go shake her up. Because when she was all done, she said, you'll get a thing in the mail next week saying that this case has been closed.
Okay, I'll look into it.
There was no
worries there.
Do you know what date that was?
We're concerned about your mental stability and all this, and it's like, why? And everything, you keep lying to me. She's like, please tell me what I've been lying about. I've told you the truth. They're with a family that's a possible adoptive family. I gave you their name and their phone number. I've done everything I'm supposed to do, and this lady was just mean and ugly. I actually came home and called her superior to find out if she actually did work there. It was the weirdest thing I had ever seen.
I'll look into that because it's important for me to look into that.
Yeah.
Can I get some background information? So you met Elizabeth about 7 months ago, and then initially she didn't call you back.
She never called me.
You gave her number. Did she give you her number?
I did not get her number.
Okay. And then how long did it take for her to contact you? Roughly.
She just contacted me. Has it been 3 or 4 weeks? I have to be looking at a calendar. Yeah, like she called me, are you ready to to adopt him?
Like about 3 weeks ago?
She called me at night, are you ready to adopt him? I got him the next morning.
Okay, so
Was
hang
that
on
like
just a
after
second.
Thanksgiving?
No.
Before Thanksgiving?
Oh, that's right.
Because we went over there for Thanksgiving.
But no, that was it was right after Thanksgiving. That was a Christmas brunch that we went to.
Okay, so
So
just
right
so that
after
I'm
Thanksgiving.
following this, so that I'm following this right. You meet her about 7 months ago. You give her your number, but you don't hear anything from her until about 3 weeks ago. Is that correct? So,
Correct.
Okay, and that's important.
She said, "Do you remember me? This is Elizabeth from the airport." And I was like, "Oh, yes, I remember."
And what else does she say?
So, that was about it. We just, I said, I want to give you the night to sleep on this and think about this, and I'll call you tomorrow if you're still thinking about this. We're starting our home study, actually, as funny as it may seem. We're starting the home study tomorrow morning. I said, we'll go to the home study, and after that, if you're still wanting to talk, we'll come over and talk. And we sat there for about 4 hours with her and the baby. And
where'd you go? Did you
to
go
her house, to her
across from
trailer.
From Arizona Mills or over there? So then that was the next day you go to her house? Okay. And then you guys stayed with her about 4 hours? Okay.
And we answered all her questions. She answered all our questions. And
what were those questions roughly?
Do you really want a baby? Do you think the kids will get along? She wanted to see each of us hold him and feed him and play with him, and she mainly wanted to see our eyes and our expressions, as I think she goes through a lot of depression over the fact that she really never wanted a baby to begin with. But I believe, both of us believe, she deeply loves him, but because she never bonded with anybody, you have that 1 to 2 years to have the bonding and attachment. She never did that.
How do you know that?
Well, her mother was such a severe alcoholic.
Oh, her with her mother.
Yeah, and she never got, right, I'm sorry.
Right.
Elizabeth never got that herself. I know because of the way she talked about her mother was drunk 24/7, and then she died when she was about, I'm thinking 9 years old, maybe.
When did she disclose that to you? I mean, that's pretty personal to disclose that.
We talked every day from that night that she called.
So from that night on, you guys have remained in contact every day? Okay.
Because I asked a lot of questions. I ask her constantly questions. I'm that type of person. I'm an open book myself, and I just tell people everything about me. So I wanted to know everything about that baby's mom. And I just felt there was something there. I felt like there's something in her that she needs to talk about,
Then in that, because, my question, 3 weeks, where does Logan then fit in this? Him being the father and not agreeing to an adoption, where does that then fit into this? Because Logan's not agreeing to this. Logan,
right?
And what I was going to ask you even later is to explain. I know you contacted him on Monday, after the court proceeding, but really, why are you doing that when that issue is now between those two? And I'm not a custodial person. I'm just trying to understand the dynamics here. I'm not a custodial.
We just care about either of them. We don't care if we adopt him or not. Okay. We just care about Elizabeth and Gabriel. We wanted to know if he showed up in court, then we know he's alive. Because, we're here. We don't know if he's alive or dead at this point on Monday when I call. My main concern.
He did just recently report. He did contact me that you had spoken to him and you had spoken to him. So then I was kind of puzzled as just go ahead.
I can answer your question.
Okay,
you're saying, how did we work that by getting him and knowing that Logan was the father, he wasn't agreeing to this. Okay, so I'll answer that question because I don't think she heard your question. First of all, from Elizabeth's standpoint, Logan was a non-factor other than signing the birth certificate. He never has ever paid child support. He's never bought a bag of diapers, and I can go on and on and on.
And she has all the proof to show that too.
But that's still...
With everything that she gets and all the bills she pays, she showed us in proof. And she brought that proof to court, but they wouldn't let her show yet.
Well, then I guess, what was the plan? How are you guys going to work that
Well,
out?
the plan was...
he's basically, saying no, and it almost shoots it all down.
Did you get an attorney right away?
Yes.
You know that phone
We
call?
already have the attorney, actually.
Okay. Who did you get? Who's your attorney?
His name is Ken Schutt, S-C-H-U-T-T.
And is he adoption attorney?
Well, he's now becoming an adoption attorney because of us.
So you guys hired him right away when she...
Well, we had already hired him because we were going through a private adoption already.
Okay.
Which once we got baby Gabriel, that adoption we weren't going through. So we chose not to go through that, and that's a long story in itself. But okay, what was the question again? Oh,
well,
how we were going to do this.
Yeah,
This was the plan. We can go one of many directions. We don't have to, because we are not the type of people we have to have a perfect family. She could have custody of him, and we could be the babysitters. She could have custody and live in there, and we could raise him, and Logan could get his visits.
You're not answering questions.
I am. Please, do you mind? I really am answering the question. Because she asked me, where do we fit into this? So that's where we fit. One of a couple different things.
No, it wasn't really the fit. It's Logan. That was my question. It's not really where
What are we going to do with
fit.
Logan?
But so since Logan is saying, no, I don't want to do this.
Because the father has to
How do
sign
you
off.
work around that? Or what was your plan? Because what
Our plan was if we couldn't adopt him, then she was going to have custody. She already had custody. I'm sorry, but there is no way in this world that a court would have given Logan that baby. No way. Maybe he would get every other weekend visits. Fine. He lives here with us. She can live out there in the casita. You know what I mean? So that was our alternative. The way we were going to get him to possibly sign adoption papers was, like, if he were to do it, was this. She's got custody. He's got to pay child support to her. He's got to pay child support. He's got to come for the visitations and get his visitations and actually visit with the child. We were hoping after, and also he would have back child support of almost a year. So we're thinking, okay, and this is, my attorney said, okay, he's not going to pay child support, number one, because like she says, as soon as he gets his paycheck, by the next day, he's borrowing money or stealing money from her. So where's his money going? Drugs and alcohol is what she says. So our mindset is, okay, so he's not paying child support. He's not coming for all his visits. He might show up to 1 out of 5. Who knows? And that's kind of our mindset of this whole thing. So when you're not doing that and you're getting put in jail every time you're not paying child support, which is usually the law if you have an attorney that's pushing and making sure that they're going to pick him up for not paying child support, we were willing to do that and have our attorney make sure that we were holding him accountable. And so if he's not being held accountable to her, then hopefully he'll say, you know what, screw this.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. I'll just sign the papers. He's never really had visitation anyway. Every now and then he would see the baby and steal money from her, sleep on her couch for a couple nights, and leave as he's stealing stuff from her. And so if he knew that he couldn't have her and she was here and he couldn't come spend the night here and come take things from her and she was cut ties with him, then we figured that, that could work. But if it didn't work, it didn't work. No big deal. Regardless, we cared about the two of them and wanted to help them, whether it be just to help her get custody and become a good mom again and be here as resource for her and her raise the baby. Any way we could have done it to help her and keep from that baby.
Well, here's a little bit of my concern as a law enforcement officer. If you were my sister, I would actually say this. My concern is you only know a person for 3 weeks. I'll give it a month. I'll give it a month and a half, okay? And in reality, reality, you don't know this girl. I mean, you don't know who she is, what her background is, what her harm could be to her, to your daughter, to you.
Well, she's never come here. She's not like around.
But if you offered, she could live in the casita.
Well, but she can't come into the house from the casita. It's
but
separate.
she's still such close proximity, and if the baby's upstairs, I'm just telling you, the danger in that is you don't know this girl.
Right.
And look at all this drama that's created. I mean, you've got cops at your house.
Right. I'm trying,
I'm trying to figure that out, too.
First of all, that was never an issue that went past a verbal remark. Okay? We weren't plotting that. We weren't planning that for her. We were trying to give her alternatives for coming back here. You are absolutely correct.
Yeah, my concern is just honestly, you meet a girl on the plane who instantly wants to give you a baby, which tells me something about a person, and then, calls you months later, and are you ready for the baby?
Yeah, we have those
like
weird...
red flag and red flag and red flag. And why not go through an adoption agency?
Well, that's what we're doing now.
Clean for you.
That's what we're doing now.
That then created my question for Monday of calling Logan. In the sense that, why get caught up in these two kids' drama?
Oh, but you know what?
And you've known this baby for a month and a half, and there's tons of babies out there, sadly. It's just like when I go to
that's the sad thing. We started going to the classes, and they swore to us, you will never get a child under the age of 6. You can't adopt a child under the age of 6.
It's really hard to find newborns.
Right,
Yeah.
I understand, but I'm still saying to get so caught up in this drama with this young couple that obviously it sounds like...
Well, it wasn't a couple. There was no couple until just a couple days ago.
You have a baby and you've got father and you've got mother. I mean, you still have, whether he disappears for
Well, I'll tell you my reasoning for calling him on Monday to find out if she showed up. We love that baby. And I mean, if you had a baby in your house for one night and found out that somebody might have killed him, you would want to call and find out if that baby was alive.
Okay, so that's what I was asking. So it was just
that's what I'm saying. The sole purpose of knowing, is he alive?
And is he alive? That was your whole sole purpose.
That was that's all I asked him. Did she show up to court? That was the only thing I got to ask him.
Let me clarify one real quick. You both said it that, it sounds like a great setup if I was a birth mom and needed something. What made her leave? Because then you said after...
No, we didn't tell her these things until after she left.
Okay, so why did she leave?
Trying to get her back.
That's what I was doing over a trail of time. So
what brought her to the point of saying, I don't see any reason to stay here? Even though I have these wonderful people that I've called up and they're willing and able.
Because Logan told her he was going to get the baby. And he called and threatened that I'm coming tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to pick him up and I'll bring him back Wednesday at 8, or no, I'm sorry. He said that the judge said I get him from this time to this time. And she swore she couldn't remember that they agreed on that in court. She called the court. The court said, if you did agree on it, you better give him the baby or you're going to get in big trouble.
Okay, so that means...
And so then he started calling and threatening many different threats to her.
So what made, between the airport meeting her and the 6 months...
7
until she called you, sometime the 1st of December.
Right.
After Thanksgiving. Was there no hearings between her and Logan? Everything
Never.
was just...
No.
He was just kind of the
They've
nobody
never gone to court. Right. They never went to court. It was just a mom gives birth. Dad was there for about a week. And...
So what started up the court hearings? Do you know?
Yeah. It was because she went to him and asked if he would sign, because they were off and on. Yeah, she just went to him one day. It was like the day after we got him and said, I need you to sign the papers for adoption.
Okay.
And then this started.
And she was kicking him out of the house because he would, over all these months, he would barge in and move in on her, bring his stuff in, and then he'd go missing, but all his stuff would be there. And then he'd come back, 6 weeks later, he'd come back.
September thing.
And then and then they'd get in a big old fight, and then he'd steal stuff, and and then he'd leave, and then he'd come back. And this was at one of those points where he finally left again. And she was not having him come back. and he was mad because he wanted to come back.
And she's wanting to put it up for adoption.
And
he's
both
not
of them
signing.
wanted him up for adoption, and he even told me that they both did, but he kind of sways off and on sometimes, and so does she sway off and on sometimes.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
neither of them have ever been completely together at the same time on a yes,
Told you
yes.
that he's thought of it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we do a timeline that, so you guys make contact roughly sometime after Thanksgiving, and then you go over and the next day, and you have the 4 hour, just where you guys kind of reconvene and answer questions. And so from that point on, what do you remember that happened next from there? I know December 8th, she gives you the baby for a couple weeks, right? From
Was that the
December
day?
8th to the 18th.
In the church parking lot, right?
And then you swap out December 18th.
We didn't swap.
Not swap.
When we got the baby, we got him from her house. When we brought the baby back, we brought him to the church.
Okay, and so from that point, so after you guys do the greet and meet, what then happens next that you remember?
We went and she followed us to the Bank of America to fill out the paperwork for, because my attorney had emailed me the paperwork for a power of attorney. So in case if he got sick or hurt or anything, I could take him to the doctor and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, and
so
what bank did you guys go to?
the Bank of America near her.
Near her house?
Yeah.
Near her trailer? I can't think of where the Bank of America.
I gave.
Okay.
Detective Aguilera has 2 copies. Actually,
I saw
3
it.
now.
I saw it. Okay, so we've got that. So then you guys do that, and then what happens next that you remember?
And then we come home. Did she call that day, or she called? No, she called the next morning, right?
Okay.
She called the next morning to check on him.
Okay. Oh, so then she releases him. That's roughly like around December 8th. And then she called to check on him?
Yeah, she called to check on him the next morning, and she called every single day. At least once a day we talked.
Okay. She's still okay with the adoption? Was she still looking at that?
Always, she was okay.
So it's just kinda
if you called her today and said, okay, Logan just signed the papers for adoption, she would be back here in a heartbeat. And she actually told Logan that. She said, I will come back if you sign the adoption papers. Give it 5 days and I will be back and I will sign the adoption papers, because she knows that legally you have 5 days to change your mind.
Do you think she's doing this to force Logan to sign?
Well, now at this point she's not, because now she thinks we're not going to adopt the baby because he's not going to do it. So, like she told me, the only way I'll come back is if Logan has signed the papers after 5 days and your attorney or some attorney faxes me the paperwork showing that it's legal and binding, then I'll come back and sign the papers.
When did she say this?
Let me see, because it was a day that I texted Logan that a long time ago. Well, it seems like a long time ago, but everything seems like a long time. It feels like months have gone by with all this stuff.
While she's looking that up, it's also important that you guys understand we're mature enough people that we understand there's 3 sides to all.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
So
sure.
we understand. We're coming from one aspect.
So probably December 22nd.
December 22nd. Now, was she gone out of the state? Do you know then? Well, it sounds like
Well,
she
that was the day I believe that we all determined. That was the day she finally called me back, because we did the MySpace thing.
Okay.
And then as I was on the phone with Logan, I looked it up online, and it said it was a San Antonio, Texas number, I believe.
Do you know who she knows in Texas? Why go to Texas? You don't know?
I don't know.
She said,
I'm going to reach.
She said something about friends.
She said she got in the car and drove. And she just drove and drove and drove and drove.
Oh, right. She did say that.
Do you guys still have things for the baby here? Or did she?
Yes.
We bought everything.
You bought everything? You bought the crib and everything?
We bought the crib.
Okay.
I mean, there's I think she had a bouncer or something there was a bouncer that, because everything that she gets, she goes to parenting classes.
Okay.
And they give her vouchers to go buy things with.
Okay.
And so that's how she bought all her stuff for the baby all the time. That's how she bought diapers and everything.
Are you guys still interested in adopting?
Yes.
I mean, let's say they work it out and they come to their senses.
Will we do an open adoption now at this time? No. Before, like we had told Logan, and he told me, me and my dad talked about it, and we're really thinking about letting you guys adopt him and stuff like that. open adoption. We don't even mind, like we told him, you could come over every other weekend and visit with him and play with him and go four-wheeling with him when he gets big and, and be able to call him and talk to him. And you don't have to pay child support, you don't have to do anything. You get the best of both worlds and
he was good with that at that time.
He was kind of good with that, but I think what happened was his dad, changed his mind about it.
So any money exchange between you and Logan or...
We've never met Logan personally.
You haven't met him? Okay,
No.
so no money exchange between you and Elizabeth?
None with Elizabeth. I was going to give her $20 for gas one time. Because the day that we dropped the baby off, I was thinking 5 or 20, or we should give her some money from having to help her drive, and me and him talked about it. We're like, no.
I'm curious, when Logan was okay with the adoption, did you guys present him with an amount that, because I'm going to double check some things with Logan. Did he hear a certain amount?
No.
Did you guys ever discuss?
No, we've never discussed money.
Are you not planning? Let's say you can adopt Gabriel. Are you guys planning on a fee for both of them?
No, there is no fee, because if you adopt a child that's going to go into CPS custody, you don't pay anything. And we're going through Agape, and what?
Forgive me for a second. One time, when Logan started first resisting, we did say something, and I don't know if this came out.
We told Elizabeth. We told
the attorney too.
Yeah, I asked my attorney, $1,000 in the state of Arizona legally, you can give $1,000 for expenses. And I told Elizabeth, I said, because my attorney said we can legally give $1,000 for expenses. I said, I know that you've paid for everything. And she said, I don't want the money. You can give the money to Logan. Maybe that'll help him sign the papers. But we've never talked to Logan about that.
Nothing to Logan.
No, we've never said anything to Logan about
The
it.
only reason I bring that up is because if she talked to that to Logan and then that came about.
Yeah, she said double check things with
But
Logan.
that's common. You have to have some money exchange for lawyers' fees, for expenses, doctor's appointments.
We pay for all the lawyers' fees on both.
So that would be a fee. That would be a
right.
cost.
Good. Taking care of
But
you.
absolutely not. Don't buy babies.
That's what happened with the baby before Gabriel that was supposed to be born a couple days after we got Gabriel. There was never ever anything mentioned about money. The mother, I'd gone to visits, doctor visits and all that stuff, all that. And her whole mentality was, she was telling me about all these girls that are pregnant and they're playing 3 different families and all this and getting them to pay their electric bill and their, and all this stuff.
You have to be careful.
And she's like, and that's just sickening. She's like, I'm just happy to find you guys that you guys are such a good family and you're going to be a good family for my baby. She's like, I could never take a penny from anybody. And at the last minute, it was on Friday, they found themselves an attorney that called my attorney. And they were basically the mom and dad of the baby that was going to be born that we were adopting.
Non-relative.
Nothing to do with Gabriel. But so they call us on Friday, and that attorney wanted us to go to Monday morning, so 24 hours basically in working hours. Monday morning, go to the court, pleading the court that we can give them like $3,500 for expenses, and then pay her $39 fee. And I'm like, $3,900 fee.
According to what they're here for.
I know, but yet they were selling a baby, and but that attorney sold our baby for $80,000. She got $80,000 on Tuesday for that baby, that Tuesday when the baby was born. Instead of us going through my attorney, that's a friend of mine, charged me $250 for the adoption, and his friend, which was going to charge $200 to counsel the parents, and you know what I mean? Right. So $450 for an adoption, that is the way it should be, because children should not be bought.
Right, absolutely.
And so we're just going to go through Agape, and we're going to...
Is that who's doing your home study, Agape?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to do...
and are you licensed?
That's what we're going for.
Still?
Licensed to be foster parents.
So, Hannah, that was in Tennessee.
That was in Tennessee.
Okay.
We didn't have to be foster parents.
Is that a closed?
She was it's now a closed adoption, but it was a kinship adoption. So, it wasn't.
She's my bio granddaughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Super. That's fantastic. Good.
So when she left, when Elizabeth left, what day do you know that she left the state? Do you know roughly?
Well, I don't know when she left the state because we
when
didn't
did you
hear from
realize
her.
she left the state?
We were supposed to pick up the baby on Monday morning at 8 a.m.
Which Monday morning?
Let's look.
Around the 21st, right? Or 22nd? Yeah, it was I think it was 21st, I think.
Wait, this is the out of town one. She's got two different numbers now because she's got the one. I've got it listed as out of town when we found out. Wait, I know what day we heard from her the first time. And that's the 22nd. And that's a Tuesday.
Okay. And she were
So that was the next day. So that must have been the next day. So we dropped the baby off on Friday.
And why did she take the baby back? Why did she what changed? I mean, that would almost concern me if I wanted to adopt a baby and now mom.
It did. It didn't concern us as much. What concerned us was we thought the baby was supposed to be on a visit with Logan that weekend.
Oh, okay.
Our concern was Logan was threatening not to bring the baby back.
Okay.
That was our concern.
So she had to get the baby back because Logan had visitation that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys were going to get the baby back
On Monday morning because Logan was supposed to drop the baby back off at 8 a.m.
Okay. And then what stopped that? Why didn't you, was she already gone at that
Yeah,
point?
I've been calling her all weekend
So you've been
long.
calling
How's the
her?
baby doing? And I started calling her an hour after I dropped the baby off. You know,
Was that the Monday before Christmas?
Yeah.
that
would
was
be the Monday before
Tuesday the 22nd is when we heard from her. It was the Monday the 21st.
So,
Yeah, that's the same time when the
That we
roommate
were-
got worried about her.
so
That
when,
what?
Yeah,
That you guys got worried?
yeah.
so when you were supposed to get the baby back that Monday, what was the agreement? Would you just have the baby for whenever
care of it.
she's
We had
take
also
care of it?
gotten,
Yeah, well, court is supposed to be in March. So until March, we were basically going to be taking care of the baby.
Okay. And which court? What court was
The
scheduled
family
for March?
court.
Family court for custody or adoption?
No, for custody, for their custody to figure out the arrangements, how much he's going to pay for child support, what
And what was
visitation
Monday
he's going to
set
get.
up for Monday's court? I thought that was
This
Monday's
Monday
court.
that just passed,
Yeah.
well, it was because she didn't give him her visitation. So
He filed.
So he filed
Temporary
in
one?
court.
Yeah.
I gotcha. And then so that's why she has that issue with
Yeah.
Monday not showing up.
But her thought process, because she was told by Logan, was not that she's going to court on Monday for this, but basically that she kidnapped the child and she's going to go to jail, and so it was all, this whole thing is a kidnapping, and I tried to tell her this is not a kidnapping.
Yeah.
It's not become a kidnapping
It's not
yet.
kidnapping. No.
So
It's a custodial issue. It's not a kidnapping. And sometimes, trust me, we'll get phone calls when I was a patrol officer. The other father or mother took the kid and
All the
they
time.
kidnapped. I hear
All
that,
the time.
and people don't understand what kidnapping actually. No, it's not kidnapping. It's a custodial issue. And you've got two parents, and it's a custodial issue. It's definitely not.
you put your pens away, so I wanted to address something that's very important. You said a minute ago, that she talked to him and I talked to him.
When?
To Logan. You said.
Well, you just said, oh, yes, he called me as I was coming that you had made contact, which I already knew that because she had said that she had called him and then my concern, which I needed to address with him if he came over here, okay? But Detective Duplessis was going to make contact with him, but that was one of my things for Duplessis to handle, that, I can't have Logan coming down here on your street, and so there are certain things that I need to check, but as we were running out the door, I did get a phone call and so forth, and so I had already known from her that she had said that I spoke to him, and then you spoke to him, and then he had said that you had called, and so there's just too much here to handle, because it's this big of a mess, so I said, Duplessis, handle this with Logan, go over certain things, I need to verify certain things, so yeah, that's how I did it.
I just want to make sure you understand that the reason she called was to see if Elizabeth had shown up.
And that's what
So
she
I know
said.
the baby
And that's
she
what she
said
said. That was one of my questions. That's what she said. Because I was like, hey, what's going on here? You guys all know what's going on here.
The reason I called was because he
She
made
was
threats.
upset. That's what she had said to me. So I can have Detective Duplessis. Yeah, that was handled. But no issues there.
And there's no issues here either. I'm just saying.
I don't know if when he robs people and all these burglaries burglaries he's done, if it was armed robbery, if he, you know what I mean? I don't know
We
any
had
of
an
that
armed
stuff.
robbery.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, that person would be in prison.
Yeah.
he was armed. No,
Those
he
are
was in
things.
prison many times.
What's
Logan.
that? Where from? Is that Elizabeth telling you?
No, I can show you his records about that thick. I gave it to Detective Aguilera. No, he's been in and out of prison for robbery, for
Okay.
burglary, for all kinds of stuff.
Do you guys have business cards?
You know what?
I do somewhere.
I can go find.
It's almost easier. I get my file a little more.
But I'll tell you.
But yeah, he just had gotten out of jail for, I think he was in there for 4, maybe 5 months or something, for burglary.
He had assaulted an
5
officer.
months ago, yeah.
And his dad went down and said, oh, he needs to be with his son, and pled this, and the judge let him off with 4 months.
Okay.
And also, he became a fugitive.
Only like
And left Arizona.
Wow.
That's why she was scared that he was
Right.
truthful about leaving.
So-
when he got his visit with the baby, he was going to take the baby.
You had yours
Yeah, so-
going, right?
yeah.
Okay.
And
My battery's
like she had told us, I would rather go to jail than have my baby with him.
So that's what
I'd rather
she-
be in jail and have him hidden and let somebody else adopt him.
Okay.
You know, her main focus is to keep him safe from Logan.
So you think she just panicked and said, if you guys aren't going to be able to get Gabriel, I don't want
That's
Logan to get
exactly.
Gabriel, so I got to beat feet and just go.
That is exactly what she wants.
Has she-
She doesn't, quote, want to be a mother, but she truly loves her son.
That's a form of love, too.
Yeah,
To
she
know that.
loves him enough to keep him safe from him. And she knows that she can go to any state, and like she said, he's a perfect, beautiful baby, and anybody would be happy with this baby. And there are many people, if we didn't know anybody and anything about this, and we just moved up here, and she said, hey, you want this baby? I'm going to flee to Texas. Hey, we live out in the middle of nowhere here. Nobody knows where we live. I might, so I'm sure somebody in another state, Oklahoma, Texas, wherever, would be happy to take a baby living out on a ranch. You know what I mean?
Do you think she was...
I don't think I would have done that. I mean, me, because I have a business and we have a life and we wouldn't want our child taken away. But if I was a little mental imbalance and maybe had no child and was longing so deeply for a child, and she did that and said, hey, if you take this baby out on the run, I'm going to go to another state, and that's all I knew, I'd probably take that baby. You know?
Do you know if she was counseled by anybody to leave the state for custody issues?
No. I'm trying to think. I have a friend in Tennessee that talked to her and basically told her, because she works for attorneys and adoptions, she basically said, you cannot change jurisdictions once it's been, started in one state. And so that kind of scared her too, because she really thought that she could go to another state. She wanted to go to another state. This was her idea also. Go to another state, change jurisdictions, get sole custody, and then let us adopt. And I'm like, now that we've already know about Logan, we just can't do that. I'm like, you can't. And so I got my friend to call her and tell her that can't be done.
You're messy. You got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
We can adopt.
More sense. That's
God's going to send us a child that we're supposed to have. If you're good, I am most likely I'll
We're going to have Detective Ramirez coming back up.
And Detective, remind us of the date of this conversation.
This is from December 29th of 2009.
So 2 days after Elizabeth Johnson claimed she had killed Gabriel Johnson.
Yes.
What was the purpose of your going out to the Smith residence to talk to the Smiths on this occasion?
I had a brief conversation with her on December 27th of 2009. So we arrived there to find out if she had any information on the whereabouts of Elizabeth Johnson, as well as Gabriel, and then to get some background information on the Smiths family and to see if they played a role in this investigation.
At the time that your investigation began, did it reveal who were the last people to see Gabriel and Elizabeth in the state of Arizona?
Yes.
Who was that?
The Smiths.
At the time that you went out to visit with the Smiths on December 29, 2009, were either of them suspects in anything?
No.
Did you have any reason to suspect them in any wrongdoing at that point?
No.
It appears from what we heard in the interview that the questions began with the whereabouts of Gabriel and what they might be able to tell Elizabeth to get her to come back. At some point in time, your questions became very pointed questions about the Smiths' involvement with Elizabeth Johnson and Gabriel. Why is that?
Well, as Ms. Smith continued to talk throughout this interview, certain things started to alarm me. I started to have what I would consider as red flags.
What types of things alarmed you?
I was initially surprised that she stated that she was devastated for days after she hadn't heard from a woman that she had met for roughly a day in an airport. And she started to talk about adopting an adult who, again, I went back to just my own experience that she didn't know Elizabeth Johnson for a long period of time and didn't even know Elizabeth's background. Another thing that greatly alarmed me was that there was a father, Logan, and when I asked her how she would handle or how her family would handle if Logan refused to sign the adoption, her response really alarmed me in terms of stressing a father of his rights, using an attorney, and hoping that he would say, screw this, and that he would then sign the paperwork. So that amount of stress on the father alarmed me.
Now, in this recording, I heard Tammi Smith tell you that they had Logan's criminal history. Did I hear that correct?
Yes.
And in fact, in this recording, she told you that he had a criminal history for armed robbery or armed burglary.
Yes.
Is that true? Is Logan's criminal history for armed burglary?
I'm just going off of what's allowed to be released and not released from someone's criminal history.
Well, let me ask you this. Logan was present in court, and he testified in this trial about his criminal history, and he testified he had convictions for burglaries from a car, and he testified that he'd gone to jail and was on work furlough.
Leading, or is there a question here?
It's not leading. To the extent she's misrepresenting what Mr. McQueary said, the jury can decide that. If the form of the question becomes leading, and I'll listen to the rest of it, I'll sustain it. But in terms of her setting forth what Mr. McQueary said, the jury can decide whether she's accurately setting it forth. So that form of that question is not an issue in and of itself. Let me hear the rest of the question with respect to leading.
Thank you.
Logan testified that he went to jail for a probation violation for absconding on those burglaries, and that he was in work furlough when Gabriel was born. Do you recall that testimony?
That's correct.
Is there anything that Logan said about that criminal history that was untrue?
No.
To your knowledge, has Logan been in and out of prison?
No.
We played earlier this morning a recording between Tammi Smith and Logan. In fact, it was a recording that you indicated that Logan told you about on December 28, 2009. And I believe I asked you earlier if you obtained that recording on that date, and your answer was you obtained it later.
That's correct.
And so you hadn't heard that recording at the time that you had this conversation with Tammi Smith?
That's correct.
Did you and Logan discuss that conversation?
Yes.
And did he tell you at that point in time on December 28, 2009 that he had recorded it?
I don't recall if he Give me just a minute. Yes, he did inform me that he had recorded it.
So at the time you're having this conversation with Tammi Smith on December 29, 2009, and she's telling you that Logan threatened her in this phone call, did that concern you at all?
That did.
And what was it about that concerned you?
Well, when Logan called me on December 28th of 2009 to provide me with an update, that was mainly of the court hearing, and then he stated that Tammi had phoned him and that it was very brief. He basically asked Tammi to stop calling him. He hung up the phone, and then he said he received a second call from Jack Smith.
And is the second call from Jack Smith, is that the call that Logan testified to that he didn't record because he went inside the Denny's?
That's correct.
Now, at some point in time later on, you listened to that phone call that Logan had recorded on the 28th.
That's correct.
Is what Tammi Smith says about that phone call consistent with what's in that phone call?
No.
Was there anything else about this conversation with Tammi Smith on December 29th, 2009 that gave you concern?
May I go to my notes?
If it would refresh your memory, yes, please.
Well, I can say throughout the interview with her, she was just inconsistent in terms of her statements. And aside from another thing that stands out for me is that she did speak about the possibility of Elizabeth Johnson turning the child over to another family and so forth. That did not come up until a few days later from the arrest of Elizabeth Johnson. And prior to that was no talk, no information about Gabriel being turned over to another couple.
Did Tammi Smith's talk about changing jurisdictions concern you?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because what I had learned is that she was already aware that there was a family court proceeding here with the father. Certainly that created a conflict, but there was already the start of family court proceeding. And so that did alarm me.
Now, at the beginning of the interview, there was a lot of conversation where you were telling Tammi Smith and Jack Smith that this was a custody issue, you don't get involved in custody issues. And what was the purpose of you telling them that?
Well, I wanted them to understand. I wanted to kind of, I often speak with my hands, and one of the things I did during this interview is I talked about how big this problem was and that it needed to come this small. And also that this was an issue between a mother and a father, that it was a custodial issue between a couple. And I just remember doing that during the interview.
Now, at the very beginning of this trial, after Logan testified, Ms. Phillips played for the jury a couple of phone calls, the phone calls that Logan said he recorded between himself and Tammi Smith and Jack Smith. Do you recall those?
Yes.
And those phone calls, were they prior to this particular interview on December 29, 2009?
Yes.
And was one of those phone calls the one where Logan described Tammi Smith as she seemed like a nice lady?
Yes.
And if I recall, and tell me if I'm incorrect, in that first phone call, Logan advised Tammi Smith that originally he and Elizabeth talked about having the baby adopted, but he decided he wanted to raise the child.
That's correct.
Is there any evidence in the well, let me ask you this. We've talked about text messages, phone records, recordings. Logan indicated he recorded phone calls with Tammi Smith, that he recorded phone calls with Elizabeth Johnson. We have the records of the text messages, and we have Logan and Elizabeth's phone records, right?
Yes.
Is there any evidence in there that Logan ever told Tammi Smith that they were thinking about letting them adopt Gabriel?
No.
Tammi Smith talked a lot about the paperwork that Elizabeth Johnson had to prove that Logan never paid child support. Is there any evidence in this investigation of that paperwork?
No.
So when you left this interview on December 29th, 2009, where were you headed? What was your next step in the investigation?
Well, I was alarmed. So initially, walking into the house, I was there to get basic information and to actually move on to a different aspect of the investigation. Is initially, in my head, I was there to, again, get basic information. But now what I heard, I returned to the station and provided a briefing, and we then made a decision that we needed to look further in terms of the Smith's role, and that's pretty much where some of the direction went.
Now, was there anything else you did on December 29th, 2009 in regard to this investigation?
May I go to my...
Refresh your memory, please do.
Thank you. According to my report here, and I do remember this, Tammi described, we talked about whether or not Logan agreed to the adoption, and she stated that he was up in the air about the adoption.
Did they also make a statement that they were trying to help Logan?
Yes.
During this interview, did the defendant, Tammi Smith, complain at all about the interview itself?
Yes, I did ask her at one point to walk me through a timeline, and she stated that she felt abused, she used the word abused, by our presence, and that she felt as though our presence was unfair. She did state that she felt as though she was doing all this work to find the baby, and she wasn't being paid for it. Jack then stepped in, and he encouraged her to continue to answer our questions.
I'm sorry, she complained that she wasn't being paid for helping you?
She said that, can I go back to my report so that I have it correct? She said that she felt as though she was working to find Gabriel, and yet she was not being paid for her efforts.
Now, we saw a text message when Detective Harris testified that stated that Tammi Smith, the defendant, stated to somebody else that on New Year's Eve, the FBI kept her held in a chair for 4 hours. Did that happen?
No.
About how long was this interview?
I would estimate that our interview was an hour to no later than an hour and a half.
Let's move on then to January 1st, 2010. What happened on that day?
On that day, I made contact with Robert Johnson in terms of just to get an update from him. And I need to look at my report real quick. I'm sorry.
And when you say Robert Johnson, do you mean the grandfather?
The grandfather, yeah, Bob Johnson.
And were any of Elizabeth's family members interviewed on that day?
Yes.
By whom?
Detective Ryberg telephoned Robert Johnson, and also, I have trouble saying her name, Sylvette Puckett, who's the grandmother of Elizabeth Johnson.
Did he also talk to Robert Johnson, the twin?
I'm sorry?
Did he also talk to the Robert Johnson, the twin?
Yes.
Both Robert Johnsons?
Yes.
Is there anything else that you did or noted on January 1st, 2010?
No.
Let's move on then to January 2nd, 2010.
Actually, let's take our afternoon break. It's a nice time to transition. So we're going to take our afternoon break. We're going to take about 15 minutes or so. Until then, remember the admonition. We'll probably see you around 20 after 3.